Londinium was a settlement established on the current site of the City of London around AD 43. Its bridge over the River Thames turned the city into a road nexus and a major port, serving as a major commercial centre in Roman Britain until its abandonment during the 5th century. Following its foundation in the mid-1st century, early Londinium occupied the relatively small area of 1.4 square kilometres, roughly equivalent to the size of present-day Hyde Park, with a fortified garrison on one of its hills. In the year 60 or 61, the rebellion of the Iceni under Boudicca forced the garrison to abandon the settlement, which was then razed. Following the Iceni's defeat of the Battle of Watling Street, the city was rebuilt as a planned Roman town and recovered within about a decade. During the later decades of the 1st century, Londinium expanded rapidly and quickly became Great Britain's largest city. By the turn of the century, Londinium had grown to about 60,000 people and almost certainly replaced Camulodunum as the provincial capital. During the 2nd century, Londinium was at its height. At the time, its forum and basilica were the largest north of the Alps. Emperor Hadrian visited in 122. Excavations have discovered evidence of a major fire which destroyed most of the city shortly thereafter, but the city was again rebuilt. In the second half of the 2nd century, Londinium appears to have shrunk in both size and population. Although Londinium remained important for the rest of the Roman period, it appears never to have recovered fully from this slump, as archaeologists have found that much of the city after this date was covered in dark earth, which remained undisturbed for centuries. Sometime between 190 and 225, the Romans built a defensive wall around the landward side of the city. Along with Hadrian's Wall and the road network, this wall was one of the largest construction projects carried out in Roman Britain. The London Wall survived for another 1,600 years, and broadly continues to define the perimeter of the old City of London. Name. The etymology of the name Londinium is unknown. Following Geoffrey of Monmouth's pseudo-historical history of the kings of Britain, it was long derived from an eponymous founder named Lud, son of Heli. There is no evidence such a figure ever existed. Instead, the Latin name was probably based on a native Brittonic place name reconstructed as *Londinium. Morphologically, this points to a structure of two suffixes. In Jo. However, the Roman Londinium was not the immediate source of English London, as immutation would have caused the name to have Linden. This suggests an alternative Brittonic form Londinium. Alternatively, the local pronunciation in British Latin may have changed the pronunciation of Londinium to Lundinu or Lundine, which would also have avoided immutation in Old English. The list of the 28 cities of Britain included in the 9th century History of the Britons precisely notes London in Old Welsh as Caer Lundum or Lundine. Location. The site guarded the Romans' bridgehead on the north bank of the Thames and a major road nexus. It centred on Cornhill and the River Walbrook, but expanded west to Ludgate Hill and east to Tower Hill. Just prior to the Roman conquest, the area had been contested by the Cativelorni based to its west and the Trinovantes based to its east. It bordered the realm of the Cantiaci on the south bank of the Thames. The Roman city ultimately covered at least the area of the City of London, whose boundaries are largely defined by its former wall. Londinium's waterfront on the Thames ran from around Ludgate Hill in the west to the present site of the Tower in the east, around 1.5 kilometres. The northern wall reached Bishopsgate and Cripplegate near the Museum of London, a course now marked by the Street London Wall. Cemeteries and suburbs existed outside the city proper. A round temple has been located west of the city, although its dedication remains unclear. Substantial suburbs existed at St Martin in the Fields in Westminster and around the southern end of the Thames Bridge in Southwark, where inscriptions suggest a temple of Isis was located. Status. The status of Londinium is uncertain. It seems to have been founded as a mere vicus and remained as such even after its recovery from Boudicca's revolt. Ptolemy lists it as one of the cities of the Cantiacs, but Drallim was their tribal capital. Starting as a small fort guarding the northern end of the new bridge across the River Thames, Londinium grew to become an important port for trade between Britain and the Roman provinces on the continent. The initial lack of private Roman villas suggests military or even imperial ownership. Tacitus wrote that, at the time of the uprising of Boudicca, Londinium, though undistinguished by the name of colony, was much frequented by a number of merchants and trading vessels, depending on the time of its creation. The modesty of Londinium's first forum may have reflected its early elevation to city status, or may have reflected an administrative concession to a low-ranking but major Romano-British settlement. It had almost certainly been granted colony status prior to the complete replanning of the city's street plan attending the erection of the Great Second Forum around the year 120. By this time, Britain's provincial administration had also almost certainly been moved to Londinium from Camulodunum. The precise date of this change is unknown, and no surviving source explicitly states that Londinium was the capital of Britain, but there are several strong indications of this status. 2nd century roofing tiles have been found marked by the procurator, or publican of the province of Britain at Londinium. The remains of a governor's palace and tombstones belonging to the governor's staff have been discovered, and the city was well defended and armed, with a new military camp erected at the beginning of the 2nd century, despite being far from any frontier. Despite some corruption to the text, the list of bishops for the 314 Council of Arles indicates that either Restitutus or Adelphius came from Londinium. The city seems to have been the seat of the diocesan vicar and one of the provincial governors following the Diocletian reforms around the year 300. It had been renamed Augusta, a common epithet of provincial capitals, by 368.